Hello and welcome back to Tinker Talks Guns. Around 2010, I was at SHOT Show and I spoke to a lovely Italian gentleman who had a very interesting, very flat, compact pistol that fired a rather unique cartridge. That cartridge being a 7mm Penna. And this was designed by him with the idea of providing armor-piercing capability in a compact, easy-to-carry handgun, primarily for use by the police. And fired a pointed bullet that was specially made out of brass, I believe, lightweight, very, very fast. And it was an interesting idea. I didn't chat with him too much about it because it was SHOT Show. There was a lot to look at. So the cartridge is called 7mm Penna, or 7x23mm, according to Fiocchi, who preempted the cartridge for a competition cartridge. And STI and a couple others made forays into making competitive pistols based on this, and it hit the market with a soggy splat and vanished into obscurity. Today, you can't even find reloading data for 7mm Penna. But now, it got me thinking. 7mm Penna is made from shortened 5.7x28 brass, which takes a .277 caliber bullet, which is in fact 6.8mm, not 7mm. Maybe 7mm was just better marketing. Anyway, everyone lies about their caliber. It got me thinking, though, could I follow up on the failure of 7mm Penna with the failure of an entirely new cartridge based on it? And I thought, yes, I can. 6.8 by 19mm. And the goal was to propel a 70 grain bullet at around 1100 feet per second, so it would produce 188 foot-pounds of energy, 380 power in a much more compact package. Why? Mostly lack of supervision and poor impulse control, but I was intrigued by the notion. And so I've got a fellow in line was very nice to send me a bunch of 5.7 by 28mm brass for me to shorten, which I did. I shortened quite a few of them. And this all gets so complicated. So we're going to go to the tabletop where I can show you rather than just telling you. Okay, let's start with the cartridge. For comparison, we have 9mm, 380, didn't have loaded ammo handy, and 6.8 by 19mm. And as you can see, it's pretty much smaller than the other two. And in the test gun, which has an 8-round magazine, I can fit 10 rounds, but 9 rounds is a lot easier and more comfortable, so I count it as a 9-round magazine. With 7mm Penna, STI discovered that they could fit 23 of them in a 2011 magazine, which is pretty respectable for a cartridge in the same power range as 32 H&R Magnum. But I have more modest ambitions. Now, the issue with a 6.8mm pistol cartridge is that ever since Fiocchi discontinued manufacturing 7mm Penna, there are no 6.8mm pistol bullets. 6.8mm is .277 inch, which is the same as 270 Winchester. Yes, 270 Winchester is .277 inch. Everybody lies about caliber. So, I had to take up casting, because the only reasonable way I could think of to get bullets was to cast them and then cut them to length. And thank you very much to Steve for donating a Lyman lead casting pot, and Mr. Birch, who very kindly donated a set of reloading dies in 270 Winchester. So these, of course, are too heavy. One set of dies I have throws a 135 grain bullet. The other one that was sent to me by Mr. Birch throws a 128 grain bullet. Not sure. But they're too big. I had to have a way of uniformly, consistently, and easily shortening them. So, inspired partly by the bullet mold, I came up with the bullet cutter. This is the Mark II version. And there is a hole that is the same diameter as the bullet. You push the bullet in, with the block in a vise, and then you hammer the cutting bar over, and it shears the bullets neatly off, very consistently to plus or minus half a grain usually. And so now I had pistol bullets. So I tried a number of loads, 2.2 grains. The initial bullets were 60 grains, and 2.2 grains of unique, 1,163 feet per second average for 180 foot-pounds of energy. But I wanted a heavier bullet because I wanted the penetration. So I cut these off at 72 grains, and under over 2.5 grains of unique, they give me just a hair under 1,100 feet per second average and 180 foot-pounds of energy. And I reckon that's good enough. So I have the bullets, I have the cartridges, I have the load, the pistol that fires them. This is a Hell 1 Brigadier, or as it's more properly called, a Mahdi Hell 1. And it is a license-built copy of the Beretta M1951, which I've shown in previous videos. They are not the quality of the Berettas, despite being made on this tooling obtained from Beretta. And they tend to peen the lugs on their locking block at the drop of a hat, and they'll go out and buy a hat to drop so that they can peen their locking lugs. Some of them are great. Some of them go to crap immediately, and I bought a go to crap immediately gun. So initially, I sheared the locking lugs off after they peened and converted the gun to 380 ACP. And then later, when I was working on a different Wildcat, which was remarkably similar to 30 Super Carry, although quite a bit less powerful. And no, 30 Super Carry has nothing to do with my Wildcat. I doubt any of the people involved even know I exist. So the gun was a good candidate for changing over. So I found a 270 Winchester barrel on eBay to get my rifled barrel. And we'll unload and show clear. Okay. And disassemble the gun so I can show you what I did. The first thing I did was alter the magazine so that it would hold and feed the cartridges, which it does rather nicely. 9 of them, as I said. 10 if you're really looking for a fight. So normally there is a plunger here that pushes on this locking lug and locks it in a position where it locks the slide and barrel together. Since the locking lugs were peened and it would no longer do that, I simply cut them off. And I cut the plunger flush. Then I cut the barrel right in front of this assembly, bored it out to 0.440 inches, and turned down a section of the 270 Winchester barrel, 2.44 inches on this end, and then to the nominal diameter of the original barrel at the front. I inserted it with red Loctite and then drilled through and pinned the barrel in place with a hardened steel pin. So it's not going anywhere, and it hasn't gone anywhere, and it's worked out rather nicely. And of course I crowned the barrel and cut a feed ramp, and then I had to alter the extractor. And as you can see here, The extractor now goes considerably farther in so that it will nicely hold the cartridge in place and remove it from the chamber. And the recoil spring did not need alteration at all. At this level of power, the slide will just lock back on an empty magazine, as you saw in the video. And about the shooting video, I had fired a 9-round magazine with no bubbles whatsoever and realized I'd forgotten to turn the camera on. So I had almost no ammo left, so I fired 3 and decided to fire 3 more after that. So that's why the video shows me shooting 3 rounds twice. But as you can see, they function. Now, reassembly is exactly like a Beretta. And frankly, not that interesting. So, the cartridge works. The gun works. The gun actually has almost no felt recoil. And it shot pretty much basically to point of aim at 7 yards. Another minor miracle. And so there I have it, the world's only 6.8 by 19mm handgun. And yes, I cut checkering on the front strap of my Hell One. I also want to replace the grips with something nicer. Maybe wood. We'll see. In the future, I may alter this surface slightly so that it will catch more firmly when the magazine is empty. And I'll probably play around developing different loads. I'm still working on a way to make useful jacketed bullets for this out of some .270 Winchester bullets I bought. And we'll see how that goes. Now, loading this stuff, as I mentioned, was a bit interesting. As you can imagine, there are no 6.8 by 19mm dies out there. There are not even 7mm Penna dies out there that I could find. So what I did was I got a set of Lee 5.7 by 28mm dies, and I'm able to use the resizing decapping die just as it is. The bullet seating die required some modification. I probably can't see it, but I had to remove the 5.7mm bullet seater and replace it with a plate with a depression in the center to cause the bullets to center for seating the 6.8 by 19. And originally I seated the bullets shallower, but now I load to an overall length of 1.115 inches. And that feeds quite nicely and reliably out of the modified Pro Mag Hell One magazine. Now, one issue I did have is that just seating the bullets didn't really do it. Sometimes they just didn't want to stay in the cartridge. So I made a custom crimping die for it. And I'll be doing a blog post about that at some point here. To do this, I bought some threaded stock of the appropriate size. Not the best steel in the world, but it'll do. And chucked it up in the lathe and bored the appropriate size hole in it for the cartridge, which is 0.315, to a certain depth. And then beneath that, I bored a 0.277 inch hole for the bullet. And because the way drill bits are shaped, there's a nice little shelf where the two transition, so it puts a crimp on the bullet. And then I bored it all the way through to 1/4 inch, so if something got stuck, I could insert a 1/4 inch rod and drive it back out. Nothing has gotten stuck, so it really hasn't been an issue. And the nut is from a random surplus die I bought at some point for a couple bucks. But it works very well indeed. Now, initially I fired probably a dozen test shots, making sure everything worked, chronographing the loads, seeing what was what. And today was the first day at the range, and it really went far better than I had any right to expect. So, custom die, bullet casting, bullet cutter, shortening the cartridges to uniform length of 19 millimeters. Yeah, it's been a lot of work, and it has been a lot of fun, and that's a good thing, because realistically, that's all I'm going to get out of this project is a whole lot of fun. And I'm completely okay with that. So the cartridge works, does what I wanted it to. The gun works through what I could only attribute to divine intervention. And I've got this nifty little cartridge. What's next? Well, what's next is I'm going to develop more loads, as I mentioned. And if I come across a cheap subcompact 9mm of some description, I'd like to convert it to fire the cartridge so I can test the ballistics out of a more appropriate barrel length. This is a 4 1/4 inch barrel. I really envision this being shot out of a 3 1/2 inch barrel. I've considered shortening this one, and I've looked into getting another slide and shortening it and seeing, about doing that. I'm really not sure the budget's going to allow that. In the meantime, I've had a lot of fun. I've done a lot of work. It's been a lot of fun. And this is what hobbies are for. To spend too much money on for no return, but to do new things, to learn, and to have fun. And I've certainly accomplished that. So you will be seeing more of this as time goes by. I'll keep most of that to the blog. And if you're interested in reading more about the 6.8 by 19mm and its development and the work on this gun, go to the Tinker Talks Guns blogs, which is linked below. And a quick search will provide you with everything you want to know, and maybe even significantly more than that. So anyway, if you like the video, please hit like. Seriously, hit like. It's not hard. Oh, and we have passed the 500 subscribers milestone. So I am absolutely delighted. And when we hit 1,000, there's going to be a prize. Anyway, click like and subscribe. It helps the channel. YouTube's algorithms care about that kind of thing a great deal. And if you really want to support what I'm doing, there is a link below to Patreon, my Patreon, where you can support me in a more concrete way, should you so desire. Anyway, stay safe, take care, and we'll talk to you again real soon.